Hello.
Thank you,
Hello.
Gaston, for. And actually, I will start the time because we have a tendency to talk too much sometimes. So it's
Thank
better.
you for being here for the invitation. So I my plan is to talk to tell this little story. Also, it's a story of a relationship between a customer and a supplier, no? And of course of the Eternaut.
And that's what we're interested in, like knowing exactly how we work together, but to serve such a great project. But we will see it doesn't just start like that. It's like there's a lot of discussion, projects before, understanding the technology, and discussion, testing all the time to get things right when the moment arrive, right?
Yes, of course. I have to say that the first contact that I received from the production company of the Eternaut was at the end of 2020. Yes, the first contact. They searched with the people of Epic Games, and they told their evangelists that were also that they also have in my country told this production company that there is a company there that had long experience with LED screens, that they were, I'm also a film director, and also uh, I can say that we had practically half of the system. It was missing the tracking system. I think that during those days, I contact you, your company, and we started working. We started working in small projects. I remember my brother, also my partner, told me, why don't you make a short film in order to show that all this function. But we decided to make a one feature film, independent feature film. Then I will show it.
And we'll show some of that actually in
Okay.
the presentation. Before we go back to that, we can talk a bit about what we are talking about today, this project, The Eternauts. And it's not just new, it's coming from a very famous comic book. Maybe you want to talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, the Eternaut, the origin is a comic. It's an Argentine science fiction comic published in 1957. The story begins when Buenos Aires is invaded by a strange toxic snowstorm, the result of an alien invasion. Uh, and what is important was that this invasion started killing our people, and among the survivors is Juan Salvo, the Eternaut, who leads the human resistance. This iconic comic was written by Osterheld, and I have to say that he disappeared during the military government and probably killed his his 4 daughters were kidnapped and also killed, and this story became like a legend. No, there were many times they tried to do this in a feature film, and they couldn't resolve all the sophistications.
So that's interesting because now it means you need new technology. You need to push the boundaries to tell these stories, and it's not just for the sake of using LED wall. It's really because it couldn't not be. You couldn't do it otherwise. You need this technology to tell this story, and I think that's what we will show. But first, like you said, let's see some example of how you started to. I'll put the next one to use the technology. I think that's what you were saying. What's interesting as well is that at the beginning when we started to collaborate, how far we are physically our headquarters from another, but how well it worked in the end.
Yes,
Being
I,
so
I I think what is interesting is in the map, we see that we are really very far. Argentina is the southest country in the world, practically. And this story must be done in our country because all the streets of the city are part of the comic. And then a very, very important actor is wanted also to play this in our country and is going to take part of the Eternaut.
And that's really interesting because that's the beauty as well of remote production, virtual production, to be able to film where the talent are, when the assets are, and not having to travel, but being able to have such a big production on locations in your country.
Yes, of course. The film. Well, as you can see, when during that year, 2020, we opened our first studio. In that time, we didn't have a tracking system, but we had experience with LED screens, and we started doing different advertisings, different.
We could show that actually.
Yes,
I think
of
it's a
course.
nice one. The Peugeot advertisement that you were showing, and that
During the pandemic, and
this was a good time to experiment in a way, right?
Yes, of
Because
course.
everyone was stuck, so might as well start experimenting.
That is our first studio. Today we have three virtual production studio, all with Moses tracking system.
So that's 2020, right?
Yes, right. At the end of that year, I was contacted also by KNS, who is the most strong production company in Argentina. And they wanted to do this. That it was very, very difficult, at least in our country. Well,
And
yes.
and we talk about the launch. So 21, that's when you inaugurated the studio, and it's interesting to see how fast it's going, right? Because with maybe more traditional studio, you don't just go from experimenting 1 year and the year after doing the official launch and having so many production lined up, right? So it's great to see that it went really fast, right?
Yes, as I told you, I'm also a film director, and also we have another company that is our brother's company in LED screens. So it's the confluence. Then the last part was to add the tracking in order to move, to have the parallax, and of course get the confidence to operate all the system. What is important was that after opening the studios, I decided to make an independent film. All this was being the Netflix people and KNS were watching our work.
And film helps you to then have a reference, right? To have the reference that here is what we can achieve with virtual production, and from that it's opening doors. And okay, well, yes, actually we can do quite a lot with virtual production, and not just sci-fi, but sometimes it's also everything when it's impractical to shoot, difficult to shoot, or locations that you will not even have the budget for, right?
Yes, of course. I have to say that this is the first feature film made in Latin America. In this case, I'm talking about Cuando duerme conmigo, no? When you sleep with me. This was made with two famous actors of Mexico that traveled to Buenos Aires. I'm talking now January of 2022. This film now it can be seen in our region in Amazon, and as I told you, we test it and we get confidence with your system. We use it also with two cameras. I'm talking of the first model of the Star Tracker, and it was very strong, very robust, and of course, for us, this was our first big experience. No.
And as a director, it's also almost like a lab, right? You get to try things, to experiment, to really push the limits, to be able to see what you can do with the technology as well, right?
Yes.
I think we have some
Yes, I mean
some footage from this film as well. So that's what we see here is the behind the scene, right? A time lapse of
yes, everything happens like a hospital in New York. All the back is virtual. Of course, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we did this feature independent film, and we were very happy. It was shown also in Mexico. During those days, the only virtual production studio in South America, in Latin America, was in Argentina. And after this feature film, then when many other studios opened in other countries and started doing big films, but we had we had to say that experimenting and also doing this kind of job, it's something important. All this film was done apart from some playbacks with your system, and it's the first one in Latin America.
Nice. And you mentioned it's also independent production, and that's great to hear, because sometimes we think virtual production is only dedicated to massive production and to big ones, but actually for independent production it's also very interesting, and being able to do much more within your budget that you couldn't do, and that's not necessarily science fiction, right?
Of course, it's possible to do a feature film in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Now we are talking about AI. In that moment, we don't have those tools, but it was possible to do it. All this was being watched by Netflix technicians and also by KNS, that was the company that was in pre-production, in a long pre-production for doing the Eternal.
Amazing. So now we will continue our story. So that's the movie you were talking about,
Yes.
right? So where can we see it? We can see it on.
Yes, now it's in Amazon, at least in all our region.
We'll go and watch it after. And now let's go back to the Eternal, the big
Yes.
project, right?
The biggest audiovisual project in the whole history of Argentina. No,
It's really impressive.
I have to say that today also in the front page of the newspaper are waiting for the premiere that is going to take place in the 30th of April, just 15 days. And this is going to have a great impact, not only in Argentina, in all the Spanish countries, Latin America, and of course, Spain. The main actor is Ricardo Darín, who is very famous, a great actor, one of the greatest actor in the whole region, and also incredibly famous in Spain. So all the people want to see all his this series. And today I received an interview where he was fabulous with his experience with working with this technology. I am very happy with his words.
Nice. And that's actually it's amazing to hear that one of the biggest production in Argentina happened in the studio, and to see that the impact it will have. I think using virtual production, it will open even much more possibilities, and people will understand what they can achieve with such technology, right?
Yes.
And great to see, and I think globally as well, because like you say, it's also for all the Spanish speaking countries. But we've seen with Netflix that these days productions and series that are not necessarily in English are very, very popular globally, right, these days. So looking forward.
Yes.
So we will see that it's not just about actually the position and the tracking, but there is even more in virtual production to make it look realistic. And we have some examples that you kindly shared in exclusivity with
Okay,
us.
something important is that in Buenos Aires we don't have snow in any season, so just that was very difficult to achieve. No,
It's the main point, right? The starting.
and then the comic story talk about the different places that must be in those LEDs. I have to say, apart that everything was scanned, and Okay, now I'm very anxious also with another presentation of Moses that I read, Scan to Shoot,
Yes.
because I think that probably you have improved a lot that area, no?
We look forward to collaborate on a production together again with this technology.
Okay.
So yes, the snow is the first thing. Actually, that's the main point of the series. So being able to have snow in Argentina was the first thing.
Well, here is the actor. Our last Argentinian film that won the Oscar was with him.
It's great to hear, as you said. Like sometimes we like to hear about the production and their feedback on how it was for the director of photography. But like you said, for the actor as well, it's also
Then I hope you can show this interview where he's speaking about the virtual production. And imagine an actor like him uh, talking about this great experience, no?
so great to hear. And we want everyone to make the most of the technology. So let's talk about this specific shot because that's a great example showing everything that's needed in virtual production to make it right, right?
Yes.
So in that shot, should we show the shot first maybe and explain?
Yes, of course, because now we are relaxed, but during the pre-production, there were appears the first doubts. This was going to have a lot of also of post-production because it was necessary to insert CGI elements. Also, the director was very exigent. He wanted, for example, to have many completives of big shots, and that of course the studio has a limit. So I remembered I remembered a zoom. Imagine this kind of zooms with 40 people saving that zoom, wanted to get the answer if we were going to be able to export all that data in a fast way during practically every day of the production, and in order to pass all that information to the VFX department to complete the different scenes. In that moment, I wrote to the support the team of Moses, and I felt very comfortable being supported by your company because of course everything functioned well, and we told them that there were no problems. I'm talking about a couple of years ago, no, that because technology changes every day. What things to be something simple today, it was not so easy perhaps a couple of years ago, and Moses push the limits.
Thank you. And let's talk about this shot. Okay, so here it is. So we will see at some point the camera is tilting up, and that's before we had this set extension, like you mentioned, right?
Yes.
And then we will see how we solved it, right? So that's the one you were talking about, right?
Yes, there is a moment where he stops because he will have the screen. No, there
you
we
go.
We have this image is part of the trailer, so I can show it, but without the roof. No,
Yeah.
as this is a technical
This is
presentation.
exclusive content for us as well, right, Gaston? Thank you so much for that.
Yes.
And now we see how we solved it. Go to the next slide. There you go. So, do you want to talk about it a bit before, or should
Yeah, so we worked also with a BP Pro. Here is one of our main technician, and he was in charge of saving all this tracking data that was crucial for the project. Imagine that here we have wind, snow, flying items. So all that information they needed all that movement also in order to insert CGI elements afterwards. This information was sent to our Unreal servers using the Moses plugin.
And I think it's a really interesting use case because many times, I mean, of course, we think about real-time virtual production, and there's a lot of amazing advantages about it. But when you have such a production, it's important to have accurate data and be able to also leverage this data for post-production, and that both VP and post goes hand in hand, right? It's not one or the other. There will always be post. There is always will be post, but it's important that everything is prepared. So it's a great chain from pre-production, from post until post-production, right?
Yes, of course. And here, well, finally the format was FBX, but as I showed, a small feature film and the biggest project. And perhaps during that small feature film, we didn't have to resolve this kind of situations. But in this big project, we did it.
Nice. So we will see the results now.
Yes.
And then we show some example of your studio, and then we open to question, right? So,
Yes, of course.
so there you go. So now you tilt up and
The trailer then.
so now we watch a trailer, and then we'll open to question after.
Envido.
Yo no sé, escuché envido.
Real envido, dije.
Falta envido, carajo. Me salvó la campana. Me salvó la campana. Cállense, cállense.
¿Qué?
Escuchen.
Allá dura el aire, ¿no?
Nieve en verano.
Está helado.
Está cayendo una mierda tóxica del cielo que te toca y te mata.
Vamos, carajo.
Mi hija está en algún lado. Y yo no voy a parar hasta encontrarla. ¿Me deja pasar, por favor?
Primero mostrar la máscara. Y con eso te vas a defender.
No se trata solo de sobrevivir, sino de recuperar nuestro hogar.
Tarde o temprano la ayuda va a llegar.
Si lo que llega no es ayuda,
¿Qué mierda está pasando con el mundo?
Un llamado a todos los sobrevivientes. No están solos, juntos somos fuertes.
Hay algo más.
Okay, great. Looking forward to watching it on Netflix. Very briefly, I think we have a few minutes left, so we can go through also some behind the scenes, exclusive behind the scenes, and then we take one question after that. We're okay. Let's go. Do you want to talk a little bit about these images, Gaston, and then we'll take this question. But first, do you want to talk about that?
No. Here are some images
Some
of the
behind the
visual
scene
art department,
exclusively for you.
all the props that they needed to make in order to match everything. It was a big work.
Nice. So it's great. Thanks for sharing that with us. I think we can just talk about that very quickly. You said they were
Yes, it's. I have to say that practically all the film was started in July and finished in December, but we have here more or less 60 scenes in virtual productions, but I can say that were more because they had many tests, many different things. It's difficult to size it.
It's not just for one shot, it's really for the whole production. So that's good to hear. Thank you. So we have a question here. I'll give you the mic.
I was just wondering how many of the scenes, like, cars flipping over and things like that, were created completely in Unreal Engine without even shooting them, like in the gaming engine?
Well, at least, for example, I know that it has a big post production also. Many cars were in the LED wall because they were all scanned. For that reason, I said that I think that the last battle that we want to resolve is how to get that content in a fast way. I think that you are going to have another exposition about that area
Yes, today actually.
because there was a very huge work scanning all the city and especially also cars. Then, of course, they used real cars also inside of our studios. And of course, there were also shots outside. But what something very funny was that in the middle, they decided to increase the virtual production shots because they were really suffering the outside work. So it's
Well, it's a really strong example. Like that's I haven't heard of that before. So it's really
yes, and I'm sure of this because, for example, there were hundreds of technicians working, and from one day to another appears in our studio, and perhaps it was a very huge crew that usually in virtual production we work different.
Yeah.
But if you decide from one day to another, and then you need that crew again, it was impossible to work in another way.
it's great to see that virtual production influence the production decision during the production, because usually it's in pre-production, but seeing that they even shifted some real
Yes.
locations in during the production is really, really great.
Yes, that
Right.
happened.
Thank you. Is that answering your question? Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that's it, right? We will be around anyway, Gaston. You're around, and we look forward for you to see it, right?
Well,
Will be
thank
great.
you for you because for me it's a great proud to say that as it said there that we make, at least in our country, we make history together, and I hope that this is going to have a great impact in all Spanish countries. Sure, no Spanish
And
language
globally, I think.
globally. I hope.
It's a shared pleasure, and we're so happy to be part of this journey.
Okay.
Like you said, we look forward to the next one. Thanks, Gaston.
Thank you, Florian.
you.
And
Thanks, everyone.
most.
Thank you. Thank you.